Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Douglas School Committee meeting on Monday, June 1st, 2020. And I'm going to call the meeting to order, and it is 7:02. We're going to skip the Pledge of Allegiance. And does anybody have any old business? I have a little bit of, well, it's kind of old and new. We do realize that people got their preschool bills last week or on Friday or over the weekend, and we are going to put it on the agenda for Thursday so everyone gets a chance to read the emails that came in today. Kevin, if you could take care of that, make sure it gets on the agenda. And then we're going to move on, and instead of going in order, does anybody have any objection to flipping and doing the consent agenda first? I will need a motion.
I make a motion to, I don't have the agenda in front of me, to take the items out of order and do consent agenda first.
Kelly made a motion. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Becky. Roll call vote.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Heather Moore and I.
We acknowledge that Julie has.
Does the chat work?
Yes.
She says yes.
I think
Lisa Brown, aye. Okay, so we will do the consent agenda first. So if somebody wants to speak for that.
So last meeting, it was brought up that we had already made some adjustments to the spring stipends for athletics at both middle school and high school. And then there was some conversation around did we want to look at and make any revisions to any of the other student activity stipends. Again, please keep in mind that those are all year-long positions. They're not like the coaching positions by season. It's a year-long position, and they've been active in those since August through the school year. And then also, I believe was on there was a question on athletic director at the high school, to see if there was any interest in making any modifications to those stipends.
Does anyone have an opinion on that?
So Kevin, I know you just said this, but just to clarify, these are all, the stipends that we're talking about are all year-long, not seasonal. So a significant amount of work was done prior to the schools having to close.
Right, so every one of them that we're referring to, Becky, are year-long positions. The student activity positions begin at the beginning of the year, and they're in progress throughout the duration of the year. And then the athletic director at the high school is a full year position. I know that position is continuously active because they're doing, Ms. Sokol is doing scheduling for the fall. Also, we are in the process of interviewing for boys basketball, girls basketball, girls volleyball in succession. Those are all on the docket. Obviously, Josh is here. He could speak this a little bit better than I probably could for those positions. And also some budget issues, supply issues, and so forth, as well as attending some of the Zoom meetings with the MIAA and meetings with coaches. So that's, I don't know if Josh, you want to add anything to that, but that's pretty much her responsibilities.
Yeah, as far as Mary goes, she's been very active with planning things out. I think she's now actually getting into planning winter sports too. So you know, if we're not paying her to do that, nobody's doing it, and then we don't have a fall season. So you know, for the amount of money that you're talking, if you were to take 30% of her stipend, say, it would kind of destroy the fall sports program. So as far as the other stipends go, many of the advisors are still active. The freshmen, all the class advisors are still collecting dues. The junior class advisors still planning a prom. Senior class advisors still involved in planning graduation activities. The NHS advisors preparing for fall selection process. The band directors had the kids out for Memorial Day. So, if you were to, I think the total for the high school is about $40,000 for the year in those stipend positions. If you were to take 30% back, you're talking $8,000, minus those who certainly are still doing things to earn that. So I think you're talking a very small amount of money that isn't worth what could be a tremendously huge battle. I'm all for fighting the union if you need to. The $4,000 or so that we might save is maybe not worth dying. So it's just kind of my thoughts on it.
Personally, I'm all for not fighting. So, unless, my opinion is that I feel like the spring sports were a little bit different because that season never got off the ground. I understand the concerns from the DTA following that. But to me, these are two different categories. So personal opinion.
And there are a lot of things that that teachers do that they aren't paid for as well. So, for example,
right.
all of the unified sports events, the coaches volunteered for those. The robotics matches that they went to, the teachers that went on that, they weren't paid. The art club met a year without anybody getting paid. The game club is still meeting, and
right.
There's no stipend for that. There's a lot of people doing free things, and I just think that if we nickel and dime for what could end up being $5,000, if it goes to mediation, now you're paying mediation costs too. So now teachers refuse to do those things. I just think that there's very low reward for pursuing that and kind of high risk of really damaging the extracurricular program.
Yeah,
I think this can be used. I'm sorry. I think this could be used to our advantage in negotiations, because I think that it shows that we're doing stuff in good faith as well. So I hope that the DTA keeps that in mind as well when we do go back to negotiations, that we're all trying to work on this together and trying to do what's best for everybody, and trying to, weigh the pros and the cons, but also to look at what will make the most sense. So I hope that that's recognized when we go back to the table.
And if I could just add, I apologize for bringing this up during tonight's meeting, but it was really based on on the timeliness of it, and maybe Courtney can speak to this, but we need to try to get this done in order to get checks in for these stipend positions out. And maybe Courtney, I don't know if you want to echo that.
Yeah, actually, Jean needs it by noon tomorrow, so to get it on the payroll. And I agree with what Kevin and Josh said, and a lot of work is done throughout the year and has been continuing to be done. So for both the athletic director and the all the student activity fund stipends. So, and again, these are unprecedented times. So sometimes we're putting things on the agenda that maybe didn't even need to come on because I don't know, everything's so complicated now. So, but I think it's good that we had the discussion, and but I apologize as well that the only reason was because it had to be processed tomorrow by noon and get over to the town. So I appreciate your indulgence.
I agree.
I don't think anybody here has an appetite for trying to take away, 30% of anything. These teachers have been doing this all year long. They certainly have put the work in. Mary certainly put the work in. So do we need a motion to keep the stipends as they are? Is that what we're looking for here?
Interesting question.
I mean, I'm not seeing, it's under consent agenda, but.
Yeah, I guess we should. I know, like I said, this is so uncharted that, it just seems like we feel like everything has to come and be discussed and have a discussion. And sometimes like the one last time, in the past, we've always only paid for the classes for the M class. It's just that it's getting confusing. And to be honest with you, for Jean, she just wants to make sure that she's processing things correctly too. So it would be good just to have a vote, just to confirm it, and then we're done. Be all
right. So I'll make a motion that we keep the Douglas High School athletic director and the co-curricular stipends as agreed upon with the DTA.
And the department heads too. That was the
And the
only,
department heads,
Yeah.
okay.
and that should cover absolutely everything for the whole year. Okay.
Motion
Middle
made-
school extracurriculars?
I'm sorry?
Middle school extracurriculars too?
Okay,
That's
high
correct,
school and
yes.
middle school.
Oh no, I
Yes.
did take that. I took the student activity meeting, both schools. Yeah. But thank you.
Just for clarification.
Just to make sure.
Motion made by Kelly,
Second.
second by Becky. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Heather Moore and I.
Doing all right.
Lisa Brown, aye.
Thank you. And again, apologies for bringing it up on the evening that with supposed to be a limited agenda. Thank you very much, though.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate it.
Okay, so now we are going to move on to the Superintendent Search Subcommittee report. And I'm going to hand it over to Becky to begin.
Hi. So, Tracy, I think you mentioned at the last meeting that we are a small enough group that we could just kind of go down and share what we think about the candidates and kind of work from there.
Yes, you could. Yeah, if you were larger, I would, you want to be thoughtful about sort of not spinning yourself in circles. But I think that you might want to lay the groundwork maybe a little bit in terms of what's happened over the last couple of days, unless you want me to. But then certainly giving people a chance to give their reflections, I think is probably a good opener.
Do you want to, you can go ahead and lay the groundwork then. I'll let the expert do it.
Right. So as the community is probably aware, the school committee had interviews last Thursday of the 3 finalists. There also were opportunities in both directions. There were pairs of school committee members who had what usually would be visits in person, but under the circumstances were Zoom visits to North Brookfield for Richard Land, to Ashland for Paul Vieira, and to Westport, excuse me, for Gary Reese. And then, of course, each of them respectively had time with members of the Douglas community. They had panels of students, and my compliments, by the way, Mr. Maines and whoever else organized the students. They had just excellent questions, were on target, on point, really a good group. Group of teachers, group of administrators, and then there was a section that was open to the public, as a number of you already are aware. And then those who had participated from Douglas were given a link to a survey, which they could then fill out, which I've shared the results of with each of you on the committee. So that is where we are at this point. And now it's in the hands of you.
So I had offered to Lisa to sort of stick my foot out here first, but I did want to say again, thank you to Tracy and thank you to everybody who's been involved in the process. And I really think that I would be remiss to not say thank you to Mr. Maines, who continues to be our superintendent as we look for the next one. And he also was really helpful with setting up those interviews. So we have big shoes to fill and we appreciate everything that you're doing. So
Thank you.
thank you. So, I really was happy personally with all 3 finalists. I think that they are all very experienced and knowledgeable, professional. And I think for me, the most important thing that came through was that I really do feel that they all care about students and seem student first. After these interviews, and I was able to do the site visit to Westport for Gary Reese, to me, I feel like I was most moved by Gary Reese and Paul Vieira's interviews, having looked over the surveys, and especially with the Thursday night interviews and the specificity of his answers. I felt like Paul Vieira has more of my attention right now. But to me, I feel like those 2 are the closest fit for Douglas. So that's where my head's at the moment. If somebody else
Okay.
wants to jump in next.
I don't mind following that. I sat down and I actually composed something because I was very moved by one particular candidate to the point where I actually had some tears in my eyes, and I'm going to explain why. Two candidates I felt were very knowledgeable about our town, and I felt they were very genuine and sincere and could really bring out the best of everyone. Their experience was not the same, but their experiences were unequivocally important. They both brought to the table a lot of positive qualities that would be very beneficial to Douglas. They took the time to really dig deep into our community, but it became obvious who stood above the pack in their true sincerity and their desire to join our community and continue to build upon moving Douglas forward for all stakeholders. And to your point too, Becky, reading all the surveys, it seemed to be a common theme that people felt like one particular individual stood out for all stakeholders. And I wanted to just share something very personal, and then I'll share with you the names. But only one candidate I found focused and addressed equally all kids during the kid interviewing session, because I happened to be able to watch that because my kids were involved in it. I had nothing to do with it, but it spoke volumes to me. And the reason why is because it's been a sticking point for me. Is I've always observed that certain kids get more attention than others for a number of reasons. And often those students who may be the quiet ones or not require assistance, or even the ones that may appear to not pay attention in class, can sometimes be made to feel invaluable or invisible. And while most likely not intentional, people aren't always mindful that there could be so much going on underneath any and all kids. My daughter can be a very shy person, not always, but sometimes. And she's been through a lot throughout the years, and without any prompts other than me encouraging her to ask any questions she wanted, only one candidate gave her the confidence to speak. And that spoke a lot to me. And that's why he left me with a tear in my eye for doing nothing other than just being real. Although the candidates that I hoped to be brought forth as finalists didn't necessarily make the cut, I also saw someone who showed the potential collaborative approach and the passion that rose to the top. And I'm sharing this with you because I believe that although I really did like Mr. Lynn, Paul Vieira stood above everybody with his sincerity and his genuine just overall interest in our town, the way he spoke about his town, the way he did his research from the very beginning. I thought that in our last interview, I felt like he was a part of our town. Like I was like looking to him for information and for like his decision, because he just so blended into our town. And that's why I would like to put him forward as the first person.
Heather, Kelly?
Do you want to go? Go,
yeah,
or
I'll
I
go.
go?
I'll go. The first thing I would like to say is a huge thank you to the screening committee for giving us 3 excellent candidates. I mean, I will fully admit that going into this process, I was concerned about who we would find, seeing as how fast we were doing this and the speed at which everything was moving. And when I got the information on these 3 and did a site visit and was doing these things, got to listen in on some of the others, I was very pleasantly surprised. And I felt a lot better about having to make the choice. I do think all 3 candidates have excellent experience. I do think 2 stood out to me. And I'm a little bit torn because I really think each of them has positives, and I think each of them could benefit Douglas in different ways. For where we are right now, with what we are looking ahead at, with the situation we find ourselves in, and with the surveys, and with reading everything that parents and staff and admin and students had to say, I will agree that I think Paul seems to be the choice that the most people are behind. And I can get behind that. I certainly can. I think he and Gary were both very strong. So that's where I'm at.
So I'll just echo. So I put it out there on Facebook onto the dynamic Douglas and whatever the other one, We Are Douglas, to try to get community involvement to see if anyone would share any feedback with me. I did get private Insta messages as well as text messages from people. So I got a total of 14 people came back, and the front runner was Paul Vera. I was especially, being new to this whole process and everything else, not knowing what we're supposed to do, not do. I really did enjoy the entire process. But again, I think Paul Vera, for where we're going and what we're going to face, I really felt like he had everything that we were looking for. And the second choice would be Mr. Gary Reese, Dr. Reese. So.
Well, it seems to be like we're all sort of on the same page. I think we were lucky to get 3 very qualified candidates, and 2 definitely stood out for me. And I was very on the fence about which one to pick, and then I read all the surveys, and that's what kind of tipped me. Also, Paul really seemed to know more about Douglas, more about our budget, more about what we were going to be facing, and he seemed up for the challenge. My pullback for him was just that he has not been a superintendent before, but we've been down that road too. So Paul right now is where I'm at. So from here, I guess we could do a quick poll and see if we're all really on the same page.
Do we want to ask can we ask the administrators or anybody? I mean, we know how they feel, but do we need to get anybody else's input, or we're good with what we have because we had everybody's input previous?
We really already had everybody's input.
I got to tell you, I'm still struggling. I just, I want to pick them all. I know that's not how it works. I think that, to be clear, I feel like Mike, and I've had this conversation with, I think, probably all of you at some point or another, or at least the thought has been in everybody's head. My question mark for Paul is that he hasn't done it before. I think a question mark that we've had, or at least I have had for Gary, is the length of time that he's spent in the different districts. I did ask him about that during the site visit. I felt good about that. Kelly, maybe you and I think Heather were on the site visit for Paul. Lisa and I were did the Westport visit, and
Yep, we did Paul's site visit.
Maybe you could share a little bit about that, because we pushed for a single bad word, and we didn't get one about him except that he wanted to leave.
I think Heather and I could say exactly the same thing. I could not imagine more glowing reviews of someone.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kelly. I'm sorry.
No, and I found it very telling. The school committee members, the administration, you just went further down the list and everybody had something good to say. I found it particularly telling that his administrative assistant was so glowing about him. So, well, I figure she works with him day in and day out, and the students, it was just, they kind of built him up to a point that I was a little, I don't want to say suspicious, but I was interested in talking to him because everybody said such great things. And then he did pop in to introduce everybody each time, so you got to see a little bit of his interaction. And then when we did his interview, it just reinforced it for me that he is very personable. He is very, he wants to, if he doesn't know, he wants to learn, and he has no problem asking. So as far as his lack of experience, I feel like it certainly sounds from the people he's worked with that he's been putting himself in those positions, and asking the questions and sitting as they do the budget and getting involved to try to learn those things. So yeah. It does. And I, we did, our last superintendent came to us, without superintendent experience. And I think that worked out wonderfully. So.
Right. No, it's helpful. I mean, I think that, again, for me, the specificity in his answers on Thursday night was, you know, like, just took that extra step. It was clear. It was, there was meat to it, you know? And I think that really made a difference for me. And I think that shows a willingness to put in the work, even if you don't, I don't think anybody's going to have all the answers already going forward from here, but that he's already putting in the work to try to figure out the answers.
I would just
We
add
also-
that he, oh, sorry, Julie, that during that it did come up that he has a vast network that he's not afraid to go back and reach back for. His mentor is his current superintendent of Ashland. So, because he has gone places with that individual. So it's not like he's not going to have a network. And that's where I think, you know, we all have to start somewhere. We're all given the opportunity. I think he's got it in his tool belt, this vast repertoire. I mean, he was citing different things like involvement in the community, check there. He knows enough to connect people for different resources. So I don't think that is a negative for him, because he is driven and he is personable, where he knows if he doesn't know the answer, he knows where to go to get it. So that was my biggest takeaway from everybody.
And I think even going into this search, I think you weren't a part of this, Heather, but before, I was very on the fence originally about not doing a superintendent search early on and not going the route that we were originally going to take in the very beginning. And one of the concerns that everybody had was, well, what happens if we don't find somebody that's kind of like Kevin, that's going to continue the vision that he started? And without any prompts, one of the things that really hit home with me was it was like he read our mind. He's like, I want to do it. Like, he would use Kevin's name. He would talk about the field. It was like he was so like wanting to be a part of this. And then he said, but I don't really have to take this job. Like, I want this job. And so he was not trying to be like, you know, give me the job, I'm trying to be the salesperson. It was more like, this is something that I really want to do. And if you don't want it, then that's fine. But it's something that I really want, and I think it's going to really work out for you. And I just loved how he said that, and how he was like, I don't have to take this. Whereas the other people, you're like, I wonder why they're moving on. Like, is there some reason why? Is this a stepping stone? Are they trying to get away from something? I never felt like that with him. So just wanted to say that too.
It's not an if, it's a when he's going to become a superintendent.
Yeah.
That's what I took from it. It's not an if, it's a when.
Absolutely.
And
But
I think he's a great fit.
to try it out with him. Yeah.
Right.
And during
And the other thing too, I don't want to dominate, but I just also feel that like this administration, like reading all the surveys and even being a part of the initial search, it was amazing how people could agree on one person, even if it wasn't their first choice. He was definitely in the top choice for like most everybody. And I really liked that. I mean, there was obviously some people that felt not the same, but for the majority, it was unbelievable. It was just so unbelievable that he just really hit home with every stakeholder.
During the interview, the question about how you're going to get the school back when it's time to come back, I thought his answer was the best of the three for sure. The most descriptive, the best plan, how he was going to do it. And it seems like he's really done a lot of research and kept on top of it. So I liked that. That really swayed me there. Anyone
So
else?
Tracy, where do we go from here?
Someone can make a motion.
Okay.
I move that we extend our offer for the next superintendent of the Douglas Public Schools to Paul Vieira.
I second that.
Motion made by Becky, second by Julie. Roll call vote.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Heather Moore and I.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Lisa Brown, aye.
And then if you want to take a brief recess, I can give a call and get you a answer pending negotiation. Would you like to take a 10-minute recess and I can get back to you?
Sure.
Okay.
Do we motion for a 10-minute recess?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Becky, seconded by Kelly. Roll call vote.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Heather Moore and I.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Lisa Brown, aye.
Trying to judge your expression on your face, Tracy.
Everybody here that needs to be? Can't see. Kelly.
Kelly, Heather, it looks like it.
Okay. We just need a motion to get back into session.
I move to return to session at 7:37 p.m.
Second.
Motion made by Becky, second by Heather.
Sure.
Roll call vote.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Heather Moore and I.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Lisa Brown, aye.
And Mr. Vieira said that he would be absolutely honored and humbled to take the position.
Ooh,
So I
great.
told him that you were going to be doing your work this evening in executive session, and that one of you would be in touch with him over the forthcoming days to open negotiations.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. And remember, as this goes forward, I remain at your disposal for advice, sample contracts, whatever else you need.
Okay.
Tracy, you're sticking around for executive session?
I am happy to stick around for executive session if that is helpful to you.
That
Yep.
is helpful.
Absolutely.
And again, I would like to say thank you so much for all of your hard work. You've been amazing throughout all of this, and to the MASC for just coming to our aid in the 11th hour. We were
I know, right?
really
No, as I
appreciate
said,
it.
you guys have done excellent work here, all of you. The administrators, the teachers, the students, Mr. Maines for certain, but all of you, and also the screening committee. This would not have worked had not everyone pulled together and scrambled. So good work, all.
And thank you to everybody that took the time to fill out responses. We had a lot of responses
Yeah.
with people's
were-
opinions. This is very appreciated. And I read every single one, as I'm sure everybody else did too.
Extremely helpful. Yeah. Okay, with that, and Courtney, you can join us.
Question, Lisa,
Yep,
do you have
yep.
an idea as to the time frame in which you think you are going to be able to? Are you thinking a special meeting to announce, rather than waiting 2 weeks for the next school committee meeting? Just curious.
I'm not sure.
Time is running out. I'm just thinking.
Tracy, do you know of a time?
I know that we had discussed sort of both options when I last met with you, that that you would essentially see how quickly negotiations came together, and if necessary, schedule a special meeting in order to simply vote the contract. I know that I think people are finding that in some ways scheduling special meetings are easier because no one's going anywhere. So if indeed you all are able to come to agreement quickly, there really isn't any reason beyond just the 48-hour public notice that you don't need to schedule a meeting earlier. You certainly can do that.
Okay. Great.
He'll have to give notice as well. So I'm just trying to.
Yes, but as I believe has been implied a couple of times, I know that his superintendent is not only well aware but is supportive of his position. So I don't think anyone anticipates that being a problem. Not that I want to speak in advance of such things, but such things have been indicated to us. Now, thank you for mentioning that, though, because you're right. Time is of the essence. It's suddenly, surprisingly, being June.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Courtney, you can join us.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay. With that, we're going to move into executive session to discuss the strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the governmental body and to conduct collective bargaining, and we will only be coming back into open session to adjourn. I hope that's right. I'll need a roll call vote or a motion to go into executive session.
I move to enter executive session.
Motion
Second.
by Becky, second by Julie. Roll call vote.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Heather Moore and I.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Lisa Brown, aye. That's it. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for, and Tracy, thank you very much for your help and all your work.
Yes, and likewise. I mean, the planning